Hello everyone and welcome to Retail Archaeology. Today we'll be taking a look at Book Vaults, a local bookstore that opened sometime around 2010 and is unfortunately now closing for good. Now this store is located at Superstition Springs Center in Mesa, Arizona, and we were here doing some other filming and happened to notice that the Book Vault was going out of business, which is pretty unfortunate because Mark and I both really do enjoy this bookstore. If the name of this bookstore sounds familiar, it might be because you're remembering it from the first video I did covering Power Square Mall. That's where this bookstore got its start, and they moved to this Superstition Springs Center location sometime in March of 2017. You can see that this location is a lot bigger than what they had at Power Square Mall, and that allowed them to, for example, add this very large comic book section, which is one of my favorite parts of the store. Not too long ago I was here and actually found a couple copies of a Double Dragon comic book by Marvel Comics. I didn't realize they did a comic book line based on the video game series, and it's just little things like that that make me love this store. I always find cool little things like that. Unfortunately, it doesn't look like I'll be able to do that much longer though. When I first noticed that Book Vault was no longer at Power Square Mall, I thought they had gone out of business, but then I found out they moved to Superstition Springs Center and I thought that was pretty cool. But then I thought it was even cooler when I found out they moved into this particular building, because when I was a kid this was the Mervyn's, and I used to shop here quite a bit when I was a kid. We used to come here for things like back to school clothes, so I have a little bit of nostalgia attached to this building. Now after Mervyn's went out of business, Sports Authority was actually in this building for a while, but then unfortunately Sports Authority went out of business as well. That's a really cool Warhammer standee. And you can see here from this shot, this is a pretty big location. Really is a shame this place is closing, because it was nice to see a bookstore in a mall again. Moving into a bigger store allowed them to start carrying other things besides new and used books, like these records for example. According to their website, things besides books and records they were looking to buy were things like CDs, DVDs, even board games. In the Phoenix area, there's another chain of stores called Bookman's that buys and sells very similar items, and I really thought moving into this bigger location that Book Vault might be able to become the next Bookman's. Maybe I might do a video covering Bookman's sometime. They're a pretty interesting store. That's another store that I like quite a bit. There's actually a nice selection of CDs here as well. A lot of national retailers are no longer carrying CDs anymore, and you can find them at thrift shops, but honestly there's a lot of junk and you gotta sort through looking for the needle in the haystack. So this place on the other hand had a nice curated set of CDs. I mean look man, they got the X-Files soundtrack. Here's their DVDs and something jumped out at me immediately. The Best of the Littles on DVD. Do you guys remember The Littles? The Littles was a Saturday morning cartoon in the 80s, and I had kind of completely forgotten about it until I saw this DVD sitting on the shelf. I always love things like that, where there's things from your childhood that you kind of completely forgotten about until you see some weird thing that reminds you of it. Now this, on the other hand, I had not forgotten about from my childhood. This is obviously the worst of the three Turtles movies, but I still have a special place in my heart for this one. Robotech. I love Robotech. And we got some Pokemon and Popeye. Used DVDs are another one of those things that you could buy at a thrift shop, but that's another one of those things that I loved about this store. There was just more interesting DVDs to look at here and not the same old junk that you would find at those thrift stores. Except for Jerry Maguire there. I did see a copy of Jerry Maguire. That's at every thrift store. When we noticed the store was going out of business, I wanted to make sure and document it, because most of the things I've covered on Retail Archaeology have been big national chains like Sears or JCPenney, or they've been big malls. but I haven't really covered a lot of quote-unquote mom and pop shops, and they're struggling just as much as the big chains. And just like the big chains, those struggles are different from store to store. For example, it may just be easy to write off what's going on with this store is that it's a bookstore going out of business, and that's what bookstores do in 2018, but from the research I've done, that's not actually the case with this particular bookstore. Like I mentioned at the beginning of the video, this store started at Power Square Mall, and they were so successful they moved into this much bigger location, and from what I can figure out, they were actually doing pretty well here, but it turns out the mall was the one that actually told them that they were not going to renew their lease and had asked them to leave. And the reason they were told to leave was because the mall needed to make room for a national tenant that would be moving in. They also gave them less than 60 days, and with such short notice they couldn't find a suitable replacement location and had to end up just closing the store. I haven't been able to figure out who the national tenant is that's going to be moving in here, but I can't imagine they're going to be any cooler than this bookstore. Bookstores are a topic that I've been wanting to cover on the channel for a while, and it would have been easy just to do a video on Barnes & Noble, but honestly, these are really the bookstores that I enjoy. And like I mentioned earlier in the video, I wanted to shine a spotlight on small business. I'm more likely to spend my dollars at a local mom and pop business than I am at a national retailer, because I understand that on top of the sales struggles like national retailers are having, they have other issues to deal with, like big national retailers coming in and bullying them out of their locations. I will probably do a video covering Barnes & Noble at some point, but like I mentioned, I'm more interested in independent bookshops like this one, and I'd be interested to know, do you have an independent bookshop like this near you? And if you do, is it doing well, or does it seem to be struggling? I definitely think Barnes & Noble's days are numbered, but I think this is the future of the bookstore, the local independent bookstore. It's just a shame what's happened to this one. If my memory is correct, this will be the 4th bookstore at this mall to come and go. When I was a kid, it originally had a Walden Books and a B. Dalton that I used to go to quite a bit, and then it also had a Borders before all of those closed. The mall bookstore has always kind of been one of those basic experiences at the mall, so it always made me smile to know that this mall still had a bookstore, and it definitely makes me frown now to know that this one's going to be gone. As always, everyone, thanks for watching. Want to see your name here? Head on over to patreon.com/retailarchaeology to find out how you can help support the channel. Hey everyone, thanks for checking out my video on a really unfortunate store closure. If you enjoyed it or found it interesting, make sure to hit those like and subscribe buttons, and also follow at the social media links down there, because that's the best way to keep up with what's going on with the channel.